This is Fred Barstein with 401k TV at Adelphi University, where we just completed a TPSU program. And I'm here with Louis Librandi. Welcome, Louis.
Thank you, Fred.
Okay, if we ask you a few questions.
Sure.
Great. So before we do, why don't you briefly introduce yourself?
Louis Librandi, like you said. I am a principal in the employee benefits practice of O'Connor Davies. O'Connor Davies is a accounting firm that provides audit, tax, advisory, and consulting services. We have a particular niche in the employee benefit practice where we do over 330 or so audits, as well as a huge number of filings for clients reporting to the government, the Department of Labor, as well as the IRS, the 5500 forms, the 8955s, health-related forms, etc.
And rumor has it you started as an investigator for the IRS?
That is correct. An agent, is as we were called, many years ago in the 80s.
Well, we won't hold that against you.
I appreciate that.
So, given your background, and we know that one of the two biggest things that trigger an audit are participants calling and also reviewing the 5500. So what are some of the triggers in the 5500 that an IRS or DOL investigator would find that would cause them to do an audit?
Okay, so to start at the beginning, Fred, you mentioned complaints, I guess, is one of the predominant ways that a Form 5500 or a plan is selected for an investigation. That's usually done by the Department of Labor. The IRS, however, has a priority work plan that they issue every year. This year, I happen to know that in their work plan, they're looking at large case plans, which are 2,500 participants and more. Yep. They've targeted the 403B community yet again, and 457 plans are usually a hand-in-hand audit that they perform their examinations on. They found a lot of non-compliance with 403B, 457s. Other areas are multi-employer plans, and of course, a significant number of their audits are 401k plans, because that is the predominant plan in America. That's the most plans, and they have programs around that, whether they're looking at part-timers, leakage, loans, and hardship distributions. They've come out with recent guidance on both of those areas of what sponsors should be doing to, mitigate risk and to follow process and procedures, really.
So if somebody has a lot of loans, a lot of hardship, a lot of leakage, that might be a trigger.
Right, that may show up. So now going to the Form 5500, when they're reviewing those forms, many of them, especially on an edit check, if there's a lot of assets or distributions or other columns filled out on the Form 5500, yes, they would like to know what those items are. Right. And additionally, if there's inconsistencies, so by that I mean sometimes beginning of the year assets don't match the end of the prior year assets, they have a specific edit check on that item.
That's a particular. So what if somebody is lucky enough to get a notice from the IRS or the DOL? What should they do immediately in terms of response to that?
So initially I tell this, to my clients, and when I'm out doing speaking engagements also, the first thing they should do is really read the letter. Because sometimes that letter is mailed out to the plan administrator, which may be an unidentified person at that company. Yep. And it may be floating around inside an entity for a few days, or even we've seen some on weeks. So sometimes by the time it gets to the right individual, they may already be, very close to a due date where the IRS agent would have wanted some initial documentation.
Is there a required period to respond, or is that in the letter?
Usually in the, I'll call it even the preamble to the letter, talks about plan documentation and maybe some other simple, readily available forms should be mailed back to the agent before the exam really commences. That's usually what an agent would request. And then they would also like to have some communication with the client or with the taxpayer to indicate when the audit can be set up on site. Great. So they should be looking at the letter for those couple of items and those dates, and then a decision should be made of whether they want representation, which is perfectly allowed, to hire a power of attorney, whether it's their attorney or their TPA firm, or whether they want to handle it themselves, or sometimes they even reach out to us or an accounting firm to represent the plan on the examination.
So final question, TPSU program, you were here the whole day, thank you. What did you think? Is this something that you think is helpful for plan sponsors?
I think based on, the interaction that the plan sponsors have, because they all seem to be confronting similar issues. Right. And I think it was better to hear it from them interactively rather than sometimes hearing it it from somebody like yourself, an educator, or me as their auditor, consultant, telling them, best practices, what to do. There was more give and take here because, again, they all had similar problems with auto enrollment or not, when to do it, when not to do it, should they re-enroll, should they stop the leakage from plans as being loans and hardship, should they add those features, etc.
Right. So we always hear it's that peer-to-peer interaction they appreciate the most.
They seem to be engaged.
Well, thank you for your time today, Louis. Very helpful and engaging. And thank you for watching 401k TV. Stay tuned.